the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this, what is it? It's the 5th of July. It's the day after 4th of July. Hopefully you've all had a fantastic 4th and are ready for the rest of the month. Okay, I need to delete something here. Give me a second. I need to find it. It's not that. It's not that. It's not that. It's this. This I have to get rid of. All right, that. And then delete. There we go. Delete. All right, we're good now. Yeah, welcome. Today's the 5th. I'm a little behind today, so I apologize. This morning had scheduled an MRI. Nothing to worry about. I'm fine. But like everything in Puerto Rico, these things take forever. And anyway, it ate up my entire day. Every time I go to the doctor here, it's a day. It's like you don't have time to do anything. It just eats up your entire day. So a little, maybe we'll see how it goes. Maybe a little thin on stuff to talk about. But there, I rely on your questions because you can pepper me with questions, and we can keep this going for hours and hours and hours. So I'm not too worried about it. I did learn something. If you go to an MRI facility, it's better to go to a private MRI facility that's not affiliated with a hospital and an emergency room. It's just a much more pleasant experience. This one was not pleasant. Anyway, so that was my morning. But I hope you had a great 4th of July. Who is the guy who always used to pester me about barbecuing and hamburgers and something like that? Was it Fred Harper? Somebody used to do that. I don't know if he's if he's still there, but hopefully you guys had a great 4th. Let's see. What do we want to do? We want to start with the UK elections. We will start with the UK elections. Wow. I mean, as predicted, completely expected. I talked to somebody today from the UK, and it was like, "Oh, I was so depressed this morning." I was like, "Why were you depressed?" And he said, "Did you see the election results?" And I said, "Yeah. I mean, I was depressed a week ago about the results. By now, it's gone." I mean, this was completely obvious. It was completely expected. If you were going to be depressed about it, you needed to be depressed in advance, not depressed on a day. Anyway, I'm not in the UK, so I'm probably going to get comments in the chat saying I don't know what I'm talking about, but so on. But anyway, let's just run through the results, and then I'll give you my assessment. The Labour got 63% of the seats in Parliament. So they will have an overwhelming majority. They will not need a coalition. They will not need favors. They will not need anybody else. Do I look disheveled? Why do I look disheveled? Oh, because I'm not wearing my usual button-down shirt. I'm wearing a shirt I wore for the MRI. All right, 62% of these seats, they basically will be able to pass anything they want to pass, right? So they have an outright majority, and depending on how effective leadership of the party is, they'll be able to ram through anything they want. That is never good. I'm not sure it's good for the right. It's and here's the thing about the UK politics, which is different than American politics. There are no checks and balances. There is no separation of power. So basically, the Parliament chooses the government. The government has executive power. The government can, basically controls Parliament and controls the executive, and it just all out, a uniform position There's no checks and balances. There's no constitution where the Supreme Court can check it, can dismiss certain things. Not that that saved the United States too much, but that doesn't exist. Although it has on at least certain First Amendment issues. There's no president who can veto a bill passed by Parliament. There's no Parliament who can not accept something that the president does and vote against it. There's just no checks and balances. Whoever is in charge is in charge. They can, within some limits, do whatever the hell they want. Whatever the hell they want. And that has resulted in, for example, the UK after World War II, shifting towards socialism far more than the United States did, because in the UK, Labour got in and they shifted everything towards the left, and that was a complete disaster through the 1970s until Margaret Thatcher got elected. She balanced it out a little bit. Again, she came into power. She had power, so she could move it in the other direction, not as far as any of us would like, nowhere near as far as that. And then since then, we've had kind of centrist left and center right government that have kind of tinkered around the edges, and nothing much has changed since Thatcher. They made it, except for Brexit, which is a big deal. Anyway, they got 63%, so they're pretty dominant. The Conservatives, who had well over 50% of the seats in Parliament, have shrunk down to 19%. It's one of the biggest shellackings in British history in terms of electoral history. We'll get to what all this means in a bit. The Reform Party, Nigel Farage's party, will have, I think, 4 seats, so less than 1% of the seats in Parliament. The Liberal Democrats, who are, I don't know what they are exactly. They're kind of in the middle, but I don't even know what that is, because the Conservatives are pretty middle to begin with, and Labour, probably this version of Labour is a little bit more middle. I don't know what the Liberal Democrats are. Maybe somebody can let me know. But they are in the middle, although they're very anti-Israel. They're very pro-Palestinian. On that, they're far left, more left than Labour is. They got 11%. They got 11% of the vote, about the same as they did last time. No, this is an improvement, a significant improvement. Okay, so they're up. So 11%. Then the rest, the Green Party got 1% of the seats, none of the votes. None of this is votes. All of this is seats. SNP, this is the Scottish National Party. They got shellacked. Good. They're like, if you think Labour's bad, the Scottish National Party is to the left of AOC on most issues, to the left of the Squad on most issues. They're way out there to the left. They're horrible, and they're corrupt, and the Scottish people have figured that out. And while they haven't changed their minds about being leftist, they've shifted their alliance from the Scottish National Party to Labour, and Labour is much saner than SNP. So the SNP's been crushed. That's good. They got a lot fewer seats, and Labour's picked all those seats have been picked up. And then Plaid Cymru, I have no idea who those are. I'm going to guess it's like the Welsh party that wants Wales to be independent, right? And then Sinn Féin, who are the Catholic Northern Ireland, who want, I guess they want Northern Ireland to merge with Ireland, got 1%. And then others, I have no idea. Others is like, I don't know what the others are. Others are other parties. Who knows? They got 1%. So all of those pretty insignificant. So all of those about the same as Reform, around four seats, right? So Labour got 63% of the seats. But here, Kuda Baba says, others includes some Muslim parties. So these, not so much parties, these are Muslims who ran as independents. They left the Labour Party because they are disgusted with the Labour Party, because the Labour Party was too pro-Israel, to its credit. Labour Party was too Israel. Also, what's his name? What's the name of the former head of the Labour Party, the real nutcase, leftist nutcase, who used to be the head of the Labour Party? What's his name? God. Again, tip on my tongue. Thank you. Jeremy Corbyn. So Jeremy Corbyn ran as an independent because he was basically kicked out of the Labour Party because the Labour Party has moved away from Jeremy Corbyn, nutty, crazy left. For example, on the issue of Israel, Jeremy Corbyn was a real anti-Semite and a real anti-Israel. Jeremy Corbyn, as far as I can tell, won his seat as an independent. Now, note that this is like Congress. This is districts. These are little localities electing people. There are 650 seats in the parliament, and they get allocated based on local elections. So Corbyn won a seat, and he's part of the others, right? Which is interesting. It's interesting that Corbyn is not part of the Labour Party. So for all of you thinking this is the end of England, the end of Great Britain, I don't know. I think you should temper your pessimism. I'm going to be the optimist today. I think you should temper your... I know that's not really acceptable. I know you want to have doom and gloom and believe that the world is going to end because Labour just won. But I would suggest you temper it. And partially, here's why. And this is to all of you who believe the left just won, the left is dominating, see Iran, the left can win. You're full of it when you say the left will lose in the end and it's the right wing we have to be afraid of. No. Look at the UK. The left just basically destroyed the Conservatives, destroyed the right, destroyed the Reform Party. And you have to step back and ask yourself, did they? Did they? So it's true, Labour got 63% of the seats. But what percentage did Labour get of the votes? That is, if you add up all the voting that happened, how many people voted for Labour versus how many people voted for other parties? You'd think 63% of the votes would get you something like 60% of the vote. 62% of the seats of the positions in Parliament would get you something like 60% of the votes, but it doesn't. In this case, 63% of the seats is equivalent in England, in the UK, to 34% of the votes. Only 34% of Brits, people in the UK, voted for Labour. Now, turnout. Very few people came out to vote. Very few people came out to vote. Second lowest turnout since 1885 or something like that, I read somewhere. Second lowest turnout since 1885. So what really happened in this election is people who would have typically voted for Conservatives stayed home. They decided to punish the Conservative Party, as they should have, because the Conservative Party had betrayed everything. The Conservative Party was useless, needed to be, really, really, really punished. So people just stayed home. The people who would have voted Conservative stayed home. They didn't want to vote Reform, or maybe there wasn't a Reform candidate in their district, because Reform, I don't think, was everywhere. They stayed home. So Labour only got... Okay, so that's one issue. Second, so that's why you get a low turnout. Second is the conservatives and Reform candidates ran. Reform is Nigel Farage's party, so it's kind of on social issues and immigration and a few other things. They're to the right of the Conservative Party. It's not clear on economic policy that anybody's on the right, right? I think they're all pretty leftist. But both the Conservatives and the Reform ran candidates in the same place, in the same districts. So they split the right-wing vote, which allowed Labour to win. So Labour got only 34% of the vote, 63% of the seats. The Conservatives got 24% of the vote and 19% of the seats. That's kind of within range. But note Reform. Reform got 14% of the vote. That's a lot. 14% of the vote. But they only got 1% of the seats. One. So they have no influence in Parliament. I mean, Nigel Farage will make a lot of hay, but they have no influence. Liberal Democrats is the only party that got about the same percentage of the vote in the same seats. They got 12% of the vote and 11% of the seats, so they're even. But notice Reform. 14% of the votes, 1% of the seats, and Conservative 24% of the votes, 19% of the seats. Now, what does that tell you? What's really interesting here is that the right, Conservatives and Reform, got more votes than Labour. The right, Conservatives plus Reform, got about 36% of the vote. Labour got 34% of the vote. You should have a split parliament. The reason you don't is Reform and Conservatives competed with one another, and they're concentrated in the same areas, and partially Labour won seats, even with a minority of the votes, because Conservatives and Reform competed against each other. Now, in the French elections, where you have to get 50% of the vote, Labour would not have received 63% of the seats. Because in those elections, they would have had a first round where Labour, let's say, got 34%, Conservatives got 24%, Reform got 14%. Reform would have dropped out, and it just would have been Labour against Conservative. A lot of the Reform people might have voted Conservative, and the Conservative would have won. Maybe. I mean. But that's not how the parliamentary elections work in the UK. Whoever gets the most votes is in. You don't need 50%. So you've got a situation in England right now, and maybe this is true in past elections as well, but it's certainly true in this one, where where a significant number of Brits, significant number of residents of the UK, are in opposition to Labour. That is 66% of Brits. 66% of Brits voted against Labour. And yet they control 63% of Parliament. Now, some of them are to the left of Labour. I don't know, the 3% of the Scottish National Power, the Green Party, that's another 10. All right, so 56% or 55% or 54%, over 50% of Brits are basically to the right of Labour. So what does this all mean? It means we're drowning in details? God, Andrew, concretes. This is what makes everything interesting. Drowning in concretes. God. It's only because you're an American and you think politics anywhere else in the world is boring, uninteresting, and unimportant. All that matters is what happens in America. It's your chauvinism. It's your American chauvinism. Pretty typical of you Americans. Anyway, what does this all mean? It means that while Labour has a majority, I'm not sure they have the people behind them. And I'm not sure that they're going to get, if they try to go further out left than maybe where most of the British public is, that they will get a real backlash. And that I think this kind of election will move Labour in a more moderate direction, in a more centrist direction. So here's my expectation. And, you know, you Brits can ridicule it if you want. I think this government will rule from the center left. I think that they will try to be more like Tony Blair than like Jeremy Corbyn. I do not expect them to take the UK into a radically leftist socialist direction. You know, you've already seen the person they've chosen as their Treasury Secretary, as their Economic Secretary, I'm not sure what they call it in the UK, is fairly moderate and conservative in terms of government spending, and you can't spend out. Now, they will raise taxes. There's no question about that. They will really focus on climate change. That is a big issue for them. And I think they've got, you know, some of the conservatives on their side. Nobody's challenged that. So they will take conservative policy, which was already nutty in terms of alternative energy. I mean, there literally are solar farms, solar energy farms in the UK. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have traveled to the UK. Some of you live there. But if like a typical Brit sees the sun, if a typical Brit sees the sun like once every 7 days, they're like celebrating. They're like going out in shorts and a t-shirt and dancing. It's the sun is a truly rare commodity. I'm exaggerating, of course, but a truly rare commodity in the United Kingdom, particularly the more you move north, but even in London, which kind of sits on this, just in this like place that is always covered with clouds. So they're going to double down on, quote, alternative energy. Now, the Conservative Party invested a lot in nuclear and was promoting nuclear. It'll be interesting. I think that Labour will continue that. They're talking about setting up a national energy company. So this would be a state-run energy company that focuses on alternative energy. I mean, that's a bad idea, but energy companies in the rest of the West are so heavily regulated. Is this that much different? So I'm not as pessimistic as many of you are about this, because I think the public has clearly stated we're not that left, because this Labour Party has moved to the center post-Corbyn, and because they're going to be limited in what they can actually do by a certain fiscal conservatism. That is, I think that they're coming in with the attitude of, we don't want a lot of debt, we're not going to borrow a lot, we might have to raise taxes a little bit, but we also don't want to scare people away. Remember, Conservative Party already raised taxes and scared a lot of people away. A lot of the millionaires who used to live in London have moved out because their tax advantages have gone away. Frank says Razi is very pessimistic. I know, they're all pessimistic. I mean, the tendency among objectivists is always the world is going to end. That's what we always have to fight, right? It's constantly the world is going to end. No matter who wins, the world is going to end. And I don't think that's going to happen. Ian says Labour also did poorly in strong the Arab Muslim areas. Yes, and that's a good sign, right? That means Labour is not beholden to them. It means that Labour pissed them off. And I think Labour did, because this Labour has taken a pro-Israel stand. So a number of Muslim candidates won. Labour squeaked by in a number of other Muslim areas, but won with very low margins, where a Muslim candidate, competed with Labour. So Labour did do well with Muslims because it's taken a pro-Israel side. There is, I guess, the Muslim independents are running under some kind of banner called Gazan Independence or Recognize Gaza or something like that. And those Muslims have, they won a few seats, maybe 2 or 3 seats in the parliament, but that's it. That's it. Jeremy Corbyn will be in parliament. That's horrible. But that's it. It doesn't sound like, this is the end of the world. Like they didn't win 10 seats in parliament. They didn't have a win. They got 3% of the vote. The category of other got 3% of the vote. All right, so some fringe group like them and the S&P and Sinn Féin, together, there's still 6-7% of the vote. And I don't know what Sinn Féin's view of Israel is. Probably anti, given that Ireland is very, very anti-Israel. Reform, on the other hand, also got 14% of the vote. 1-4. And if you add Reform and Conservative again, they got 38%. They would have been, if Reform and Conservative come together, they would have been 38% of the vote. I don't know how many seats they would have won, but they would have been 38% of the vote. So anyway, I said Corbyn was a huge anti-Semite, yes. So anyway, I'm not panicking. This is bad, but it's regular bad. It's conventional bad. It's not the end of the world. And, this is the left reformed itself, got away from the far left. And, the conservatives deserve to lose. So in this sense, this is the sense in which I wish Trump could lose. They got crushed. And this is going to cause them a real rethinking of who they are and what they stand for. Now, one of the best things to come out of this election is that the conservatives are really, it seems like, doing that. And the number one candidate for leadership of the Conservative Party right now, and I hope this is the case, is Kemi Badenoch. Is that how you say it? Kemi Badenoch. And Kemi Badenoch, I think, is as good as you can expect from a conservative. She's got the kind of she's really tough. She's got kind of a Margaret Thatcher toughness. She's really smart and really quick. She is going to be the main person who stands up and criticizes the government in British Parliament. They kind of have this debating society within British Parliament. It's Badenoch, which is great. Kemi is black. She's Nigerian. She's an immigrant representing the Conservative Party, which is fantastic. She's very good on some of the trans issues. So if the Labour Party does stupid things on the trans issue, she's going to be all over them. And again, because she's a woman, she's black, she's an immigrant. If the Labour stuff do stuff on immigration, all this stuff, she is going to be the voice of the Conservative Party. I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be exciting. She is a real, again, as good as you can get in modern politics, defender of capitalism, as good as you can get. I think she's far better than the Conservatives have been on issues like capitalism, of economic freedom. I'm excited to watch her be the opposition leader and what she does. Now, she hasn't been voted in yet, but she is the front runner right now. I'm not sure she is a Margaret Thatcher. All I said, she has Margaret Thatcher-like toughness, not that she is Margaret Thatcher. She's as close to Margaret Thatcher as I think the Conservatives have right now. And as you know, I've met her. We have communicated via Twitter Messenger. I'm going to try to meet with her next time I'm in England. So this is what happens. You see, what happens when you get shellacked, what happens when you get crushed, is maybe, in some cases, you rethink policy. This is why I wish it won't happen. I know it won't happen. Don't tell me. I know. I wish Trump got crushed. I wish the Republican Party got crushed in 2020. I wish they got crushed in 2024 so that they could rethink. But it ain't happening. It looks like Trump's going to win, if anything, right? All right. What else do we want to say about the British elections? Nothing really. I think that's it. I will be looking. Yeah, I don't want to upset Andrew with more details. Yeah, I think we're going to have to watch this again. Lowest turnout since certainly in modern times since 1950. I think it's the second lowest since 1885. And all right, let's wait and see. Maybe Razi's right and I'm wrong. It is possible. I don't think it's ever happened where Razi's been right and I've been wrong, but it is possible. I have no idea if that's happened. So just I know you guys are going to run to Razi and say, Yaron's been bad-mouthing you. He says some horrible things about you. All right. Yeah, let's see. All right. Just the ongoing saga, right, of Biden. Is Biden going to withdraw? Isn't he going to withdraw? It's like today he's going to have. I don't know if you heard this. Today he's going to have a cognitive a cognitive test. They're going to do a test of cognition, and they're gonna check him out. It's going to be done live on, I think, ABC. And it's going to be, Stephanopoulos is going to be running the cognitive test. I think he got a PhD in psychiatry or some disorder, something at some point. So this is the big test. It should be super entertaining to watch, right? Super entertaining. I mean, it is. He's doing this interview to prove that he's okay. So he told. I mean, what do you do with this stuff, right? He told the governors, like he met with the governors yesterday, and told them, no, he's completely fine to be as president. And the real problem is he's not getting enough sleep, and that he basically, that's it. He's going to sleep now. He's going to go to sleep at 8 p.m. And he's the work day is going to be from 4 p.m. to from 10 a.m. to whatever 4 p.m. and he's going to go to sleep at 8 a.m. and he needs more sleep. I mean, somebody should tell Putin, Xi, I don't know, the Iranians, Hamas, North Korea, that they're not allowed to do anything upsetting after 8 p.m. because the President of the United States needs his beauty sleep. Please don't disturb him. Please don't do anything that might require waking him up. Now, I'm not sure we want to wake him up because maybe it's better that we wait until 10 a.m. where he's if we wake him up, who knows what'll happen. Please don't attack at 9 p.m. Please don't do anything that requires presidential permission at 8:30. Or even at 12 or 1, because he might not be himself. He needs his sleep. I can tell you, as you get older, you need your sleep. Oh, God. I mean, what do we do with this guy? The very fact that he hasn't resigned yet or stepped down, doesn't have to resign, but step down. He should resign, too. But he should certainly step down. With the simple logic. I mean, he could say this. He could say, look, there's no question I am starting to decline. While I can still function as president right now, biology says that every year I will decline more. And I worry because I care about the American people. I care about America. I worry about my ability to do my job well a year from now, 2 years from now, and certainly 4 years from now. And as a consequence, I've decided to step down from running. I will complete my term, and I put this into the hands of the Democratic delegates, or I back Kamala Harris, or whatever it is that he does. He steps down. Now, it's hard when you get to that age to recognize and admit that you are having problems. So people at this age, because, admitting that you're having problems just for a regular person, put aside the President of the United States, just for a regular person, it's going to be very hard for such a person for any person to admit it, because it means you're acknowledging you're going to die soon. You're acknowledging you're going to be less, significantly less. It's not just about, well, I can't run a marathon anymore. Now you're saying to yourself and to the world, I can't think. My mind is not working. And I cannot think of a more horrible realization to come to as a human being. I mean, I dread the day where that happens to me. And having to recognize and admit and internalize the idea that my mind is going. I don't know. What do you do? I mean, I'm hoping that I can get to a place that has euthanasia, and so that the worst of it I can prevent myself from living through. But at some point, that is the solution, because living with it is just unbelievably horrific. So we'll see what he does. I mean, I think if he does poorly tonight with Stephanopoulos, now Stephanopoulos is about as friendly an interviewer as he can get. Stephanopoulos is going to give him softballs and to give him every opportunity to do well. But certainly if he doesn't today, then I think it's cooked. Now, I have not seen Peter Zane's take on the governors taking over. They haven't yet. If they had, he would have come out of that meeting and resigned. But it's going to be interesting to see how exactly this evolves. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, what really will become interesting is when he leaves, what does the Democratic Party do? Does it coalesce around Kamala, or does it open it up for a real competition? And if it opens it up to real competition, it's going to be a bloodbath. The governors will try to establish order, but there are at least two governors who want the job. That is the governor of Michigan and the governor of California. And there's Kamala, who wants the job. It's not clear where Obama or where Clinton, who have a lot of power within the Democratic Party, stand. And of course, Biden will have a lot of say, primarily because Biden controls much of the money involved. Now, some donors have already said that they are cutting off the Biden. So the heir to the Walt Disney fortune, his granddaughter, I don't know, the heir to the Walt Disney fortune, who is a big-time Democratic donor, has basically said, as long as Biden is running for president, we will not fund him or his PAC. A number of other very wealthy Democratic donors have basically come out and said the same. I think that is what's going to ultimately collapse the Biden campaign. It's when the donors say, Reed Hastings, the founder of Amazon, has also said he will not fund Biden. So he's a huge Democratic funder, that he will not fund Biden. So the donors will ultimately decide this. And no, I'm pretty sure Reed Hastings founded Netflix. Did I say something else? Netflix. You see, even I'm starting to lose it. So this is going to be really fun and interesting to watch, all at the same time as Trump is, in the meantime, while Biden's still around, solidifying his lead, increasing his lead and solidifying it. It's going to be very difficult for anybody coming in to challenge Trump. I mean, again, polls show Michelle Obama as the one person who could beat Trump right now. I don't know how real that is. I really don't know how real that is. I mean, really, the people really, are independents just going to jump on the Michelle Obama bandwagon, maybe out of nostalgia for Obama's, Obama's presidency? I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why that would happen. What would motivate that to happen? For Michelle Obama to just be that dominant, it just seems weird to me. Let me just thank Silvanos. Thank you, Silvanos, for the $20 sticker. Really appreciate that. And thank you to Jackson Highlander for a $20 sticker. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. We're very close to our target for the first hour. We just need like, $37, and we're there. So maybe two $20 stickers would get us there if anybody's considering that. So yes, the Democratic race is going to be fascinating, interesting. We will definitely, it's definitely going to be fun to watch, and it'll be interesting to see if they can come up with a candidate that can actually challenge Trump. Again, I think that somebody smart, fast, with a bit of a sense of humor, could crush Trump in a debate. I mean, Trump was pretty bad, and he said such stupid things. It wouldn't be that hard to show how ridiculous what he says is. But I just don't think they have the time. I think this is Trump's to lose, and it doesn't seem like Trump could do anything to lose. It looks like Trump at this point is invincible, but we will see. We will see. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are going to watch this interview tonight. I probably won't. I'll probably watch it not live so I can fast forward, or watch it on double speed or something, because it's too painful. Okay, a lot of talk about Project 2025. The left is basically flipping out over it, primarily in conjunction with the Supreme Court rulings from last week. So if you combine the two, the left is just flipping out right now. They're really upset. So let's go through what Project 2025 is. Let's talk about what Donald Trump actually says about Project 2025, which is really funny. It's actually quite hysterical. Anyway, Project 2025 is a program that's run out of the Heritage Foundation. It is a project that basically aims. It's run by Kevin Roberts, who's the CEO of the Heritage Foundation, who used to be the CEO of the Texas Public Policy Institute, something like that, a free market institute in Texas. It's basically the idea that what they want to do is have position papers on all the major issues, from the regulatory agencies to the role of the presidency, to the various departments, to every single department, to the Federal Reserve, to policies on trade, and then in addition, foreign policy. Foreign policy as well, and everything around in defense and everything, right? So they have policies that a Trump administration, or as they like to say, the next conservative administration, which they assume is going to be Trump, can just use as guiding principles in governing. So these are not theoretical papers. These are like this regulation and this provision, and this is what you should urge Congress to do, and these are the people that need to be fired, and these are the departments that need to be closed, and this is the reform that needs very, very, very detailed documents that lay out the state as it is right now, what Biden's done, what it was under Trump before, and what should be done now. And it's detailed throughout. In addition, so that's step one, right? In addition, when a new administration comes in, they typically want to replace all the political appointees that were appointed by the previous administration. And so it's both strategic and tactical, both. So they want to replace all the people. And when Trump came in 2016, it took him years to appoint, and he didn't really appoint everybody he needed to appoint, even by the time he had left office. He hadn't appointed everybody he needed to appoint to the key positions within the government. So what Heritage is doing is they're literally interviewing people for 3,000 positions. There are 3,000 positions. Some of them the president can appoint immediately. Some of them have to be confirmed by Congress. And the idea is that on the day the president takes the job, or really during the transition, right? There's this transition period. We'll see how nice Biden plays in the transition period with Trump. Trump did not play nice with Biden during the transition period. But during the transition period, the idea is that Trump will be able to get lists. Who should I put in the Defense Department? Here's the list. Who should I put in to run, I don't know, the U.S. Agency for Global Media? I didn't even know there was such a thing. Agencies, not one. Here they are, right? Who should run Voice of America? Who should run this? We've already vetted everybody. These are the candidates. So this is super smart to do, right? So this is a winning strategy, if you will, for anybody who wants to be able to get into office and hit the road running. It's a winning strategy for a movement that wants to have real influence really fast, and that wants to be able to make real changes, fundamental changes within government. So the process, the idea is truly excellent, and it's the way, you know, if I were running for president, I would want to have this. Indeed, I would want to have something like this on my website as part of my campaign. This is what I'm going to do. So you know what I'm going to do. And here are the people that I would put to do it. So you have it already. Have it already. It's a beautiful idea. And the challenge here is not the idea. The challenge is not the idea. The challenge is who's doing it and what they believe in. Now, Heritage, I've never been a fan of Heritage. Heritage was founded by people who were committed to the religiosity of essential to the conservative movement. And I know the founder of Heritage. I actually served on a panel with him, funnily enough. We were both on a panel. God, I can't even remember what the topic was. But we sat on a panel together. For years, he ignored me. We used to go, we both members of Mont Pelerin Society. And he would ignore me completely, right? He knew who I was, and he'd ignore me. And partially is that in Mont Pelerin, I was the guy who would always go up and voice the opinion that religion and liberty are incompatible. And now he's retired. He's one of the founders, but he's retired as the CEO of Heritage. Anyway, he would ignore me for those years. And then we landed up being both invited to serve on a panel at a conference in South Korea, in Seoul, South Korea, like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it was me and him and a free market economist. And he was like, you know, he loved what I had to say. He was all complimentary. He was very friendly. He was very nice, which is kind of funny and interesting. Anyway, so I know the Heritage Foundation. I know what it's funded on, and I never liked it. But there were always people within Heritage who were quite good. There was a guy doing financial regulations that was excellent. He's left, and he's now at CATO. There was a joke that said there's a flaw at CATO. Like, CATO's huge. It has hundreds of employees, I think 400. And it used to be this joke that there's a flaw at CATO, which is where the free market guys sit. And that's it. And everybody else is anti-free markets. If you remember Obamacare, you remember Obamacare? Obamacare was really this is why I think Mitt Romney lost the presidency in 2012. Obamacare was a revised version of something called Romneycare, which Romney had implemented in Massachusetts when he was governor. And Romneycare, which is very similar to Obamacare, was designed by the Heritage Foundation. So the Heritage Foundation is a fundamentally statist foundation. It's a foundation that wants to provide conservative solutions to the problems at hand. And it's not a free market. It does not have free market principles or free market ideas. It wants a robust government. It wants a robust government promoting and advocating for and imposing on us so-called conservative ideas, primarily conservative ideas in the areas of social areas, right? So now, since Kevin Roberts has come, most of the libertarian, free market, let's say, leaning people have left. Some of them have gone to Cato. Others have gone elsewhere. Some of the people in foreign policy who were pretty good at Cato, who had a tough foreign policy and objected and supported, for example, U.S. support for Ukraine, have left. And what's left at Heritage is the kind of religious conservatives, the mainstream conservatives, the statist conservatives, the pro-big government conservatives. And they are the ones writing Project 2025. Now, here and there, looking through it, there's some good ideas of shrinking government, of getting rid of certain elements within. Yeah, a capitalist guy says the national conservatives. Yeah, much of what Heritage is today is national conservative. Not good. Not good. So they are, some of the stuff they say is pretty good. Some of the stuff they have, they're not sure about. Like I told you, I think last time, they've got two different people writing essays on trade. One, Peter Navarro, who's anti-trade, and one, a guy who's pro-free trade, Kent Lastman. So they don't want to take too hard of a position. They've got the same thing on the Export-Import Bank. They've got Veronica Duruji, who's basically a free marketer, says that the Export-Import Bank should be abolished because she's a free marketer. And Jennifer Hazelton, because she's a statist, who wants the government to have the power to control import and export and trade and economy and all of that. She is for keeping the Export-Import Bank. So you've got all this other stuff. Now, you can read this. It's not easy reading because it's not a strategic document. It's a tactical document. It goes into the nitty-gritty details of all these things. So I opened up at the Department of Education, and I thought, okay, we've had presidential candidates who've said, we want to eliminate the Department of Education. I wonder if that's their stance, and it's not. I haven't read it in full detail, so I don't know everything that they say here, but it's basically about reforming the Department of Education to stand for and advocate for things that the conservatives would want. I mean, it goes to this level. One of the bullet points here is switch to fair value accounting from FCRA accounting. I mean, I'm sure that's a good idea, but I don't know what any one of those are, and it doesn't really matter. Andrew asked about charter schools. The problem is that schools are primarily regulated at the state level. So the federal government doesn't have a lot of power when it comes to it. Now, they want to allocate money to the states to be able to supply for choice. But again, choice, and I'm not for charter schools. I think charter schools should be What we want is real choice. What we want is education saving accounts, not charter schools. But it's, they can shift the money they give to the states to be more oriented towards that. But nothing here is big. They've got their own priorities. They go through the math scores. We need to get better at math. We need to get better at reading. These are central planners. These are statists. The only thing the federal government should do vis-a-vis education is nothing. That is shut it down. And maybe the most important thing is get out of student loans, get out of Pell Grants, get out of every part of, funding education. And get out of regulating and standardized tests and all these things. The government needs to get out of all of it. That's it. And they have, God, I don't know how many pages. I'm scrolling down, 36, 44. Yeah, 44 pages. Now, one page is footnotes, but 44 pages with stuff they should do. Stuff they should do. And most of it is not get rid of stuff, eliminate stuff. Most of it is reform. Some few things here, there. So I'm not a big fan of Project 2025. And again, I need to read more of it, and I will, because again, Trump's going to get elected. These are the people who are going to be in charge. I should know what they say. So I'll read more of it and give you more opinions as we go along. So far, unimpressed. Anyway, the really funny thing about this is Trump's reaction to it, right? The media, everybody is lambasting Project 2025. They're going to destroy America. Kevin Roberts over the 4th of July weekend said Project 2025 is the second American Revolution. We're going to change everything about America. A second American Revolution. It's going to be peaceful. If the left lets it be peaceful, but this is a revolution. He said it on Steve Bannon's show. Second American Revolution. The left is flipping out about this. And this is so Trump today goes on Truth Social, his platform, and he says, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it." And this is Trump, right? This is so funny. Because if you say, "I know nothing about it, and I don't know who's behind it, and I know nothing about it," then that's it. You know nothing about it. But Trump goes on to say, "I disagree with some of the things they're saying." How can he disagree if he doesn't know anything about it? I just find that typical and funny, right? And this is written, right? So he wrote this on Twitter, so it's not like he spoke it and he misspoke. This he wrote. So I have no idea who's behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them. The idea that Trump doesn't know who Kevin Roberts is ridiculous, right? I don't know. I'm really, really, really curious now. Now I wish I knew Trump so I could ask him this. What does Trump consider absolutely ridiculous and abysmal? My fear and my suspicion is that he views the stuff that's abysmal and ridiculous, probably the better stuff there. The stuff that's actually good. The stuff that actually probably limits the government and frees up the economy, maybe a few things here and there that they say about that. But again, this is one person, as Trump describes himself, that knows nothing about Project 2025. So I don't know what's going on. A spokesperson of Trump said, "Look, Project 2025 is not ours. We have our own campaign site where we have, kind of our stuff, right?" So I said, "Okay, I'll go to the campaign stuff." And it's pretty funny. There's some funny proposals there made by Trump, like He wants to basically steal money from Ivy League endowments. I'll call it steal because that's what it would be. Confiscate money because the Ivy League endowments are too big, not fair. He wants to take that money and start an American university, an American principles university, as defined, I guess, by Trump or defined by somebody. So that's just one of the proposals. There's some other funny ones. Maybe I'll look deeper into that and maybe get back to you with a few of those. All right, what do we do now? What should we do? Should we talk about immunity? Let's talk a little bit about immunity and then call it a day, and then take your questions. The questions are lagging, though, guys, so I don't know what to say to you. We need more questions. We're falling behind on the super chat in terms of kind of what's required. Carolina just stepped in with a sticker to help out a little bit. So, yeah, please consider supporting the show. We've got a lot of people watching right now, about 140. So please consider showing some support. Anyway, had a chance to read some commentary on the immunity. Commentary for some, I think, good thinkers about constitutional issues. It's really hard to form opinions about controversial opinions like this on the fly. They require real thinking and they require real reading and see what they're really coming to. But I think it's safe to say that I've come to the conclusion that the immunity case was really, really, really badly decided. That it grants way too much immunity to presidents and is really risking putting much too much power in the hands of presidents without ability to without any kind of motivation to cap that power or to rein in that power grab that they might have. It basically, as we talked about, takes presidential actions, places them in a sense in three buckets. One bucket is doing your constitutional duty, and in that you have full immunity. So core constitutional powers that you have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution. Then there's some degree of presidential immunity, in some cases absolute and some merely presumptive, for other official acts. And then there is no immunity for purely private acts. So those are the three categories that they have now created for presidents. What's interesting about the decision, which I like Ilya Somin. Ilya Somin is a lawyer that writes a lot about constitutional issues, often writes commentary on Supreme Court decisions, and I like what he writes. He is, I believe, at CATO. I'm always mix him up with the other guy who's at the Manhattan Institute. So there are two of them. Ilya Somin also writes for the Volk conspiracy. The Volk conspiracy used to be, where was it originally? It used to be just a Volk conspiracy. Volk used to run it out of the law school. Then it was part of the Washington Post. The Washington Post kind of bought it, and it was under the Washington Post. And then it was spun out, and now it's under Reason magazine. So it's moved over. Walter Olson is also very good on this issue. Ilya Somin is very good. You can read them both on the Volokh conspiracy, V-O-L-O-K-H. V-O-L-O-K-H. Right? So you can find their writings there. There's another guy at Manhattan who I like, who's a little bit more conservative than these guys are, but he's also good, and he was good on this. Anyway, what was interesting here is that you had a 6-3 conservative majority. And the conservatives claim to be originalists, textualists, original intent of the Constitution. And yet, what Ilya Somin points out is there is no language in the Constitution. There was no language that you can find among the founders to justify this decision written by Roberts and signed on for by the other conservatives. There's just nothing there. There's no there. Quite the contrary. There's every reason to believe that from the perspective of the Constitution, presidents do not have immunity for anything. So, for example, the liberal judge, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, actually goes to the Constitution in her dissent. She writes, the Constitution's text contains no provision for immunity from criminal prosecution for former presidents. Right? Of course, the silence of the Constitution in this court is not dispositive. Omission in the text of the Constitution is worth noting, however, for at least 3 reasons. So, first of all, so she acknowledges this isn't crucial, but you'd think that for originalists it would be. First, she says, the framers clearly knew how to provide for immunity for prosecution. They did provide a narrow immunity for legislatures in the speech or debate clause of the Constitution. See Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1. They did not extend the same or similar immunity to presidents. She goes on. Second, some states' constitutions at the time of the framing specifically provided express criminal immunities to sitting governors. You can find this, she cites where it is. The framers chose not to include similar language in the Constitution to immunize the president. If the framers had wanted to create some constitutional privilege to shield the president from criminal indictment, they could have done so. They did not. Third, insofar as the Constitution does speak of this question, it actually contemplates some form of criminal liability for former president. The majority correctly rejects Trump's argument that a former president cannot be prosecuted unless he is being impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate for the same conduct. So both the majority and the dissent agree on that. The majority ignores, however, that the impeachment judgment clause cuts against its own position. That clause presumes the availability of criminal process as a backstop by establishing that an official impeached and convicted by the Senate, quote, shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment, according to the law. That clause clearly contemplates that a former president may be subject to criminal prosecution for the same conduct that resulted or could have resulted in an impeachment judgment, including conduct such as bribery that implicates official acts almost by definition. Aware of its lack of textual support, the majority points out that the court has, quote, recognized presidential immunities and privileges rooted in the constitutional tradition of the separation of powers and supported by our history. That is true as far as it goes. Nothing in our history ever supports the majority's entirely novel immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts. And, so this is good. She goes on, the historical evidence that exists on presidential immunity for criminal prosecution cuts decisively against it. For instance, Alexander Hamilton wrote that former presidents should be, quote, liable to prosecution and punishment in the ordinary course of law in Federalist 69. For Hamilton, That was an important distinction between, quote, the King of Great Britain and who's sacred and inviolate, and the President of the United States who, quote, would be amenable to personal punishment and disgrace. In contrast to the king, the president should be subject to, quote, personal responsibility for his actions. Quote, standing upon no better ground than a governor of New York and upon worse ground than the governor of Maryland and Delaware, whose state constitutions gave them some immunity. At the Constitutional Convention, James Madison, who was aware that some state constitutions provided governors immunity, proposed that the convention consider what privilege ought to be allowed to the executive. There is no record of any such discussion. Delegate Charles Pinckney later explained that, quote, the convention which formed the Constitution well knew that no subject has been more abused than privilege, and so it, quote, determined to limit privilege to what was necessary. And no more. No privilege was intended for the executive. I mean, this is amazing. Everything around the Constitution suggests there should be no immunity. She goes on, Sotomayor goes on to say, other commentators around the time of the founding observed that federal officials had no immunity from prosecution, drawing no exception for the president. I mean, the Supreme Court should be there to defend us from the government. Not the government from us. The primary role of the courts is to protect us from abuses of power, not to shield the abusers and allow them to abuse their power. It is, this ruling, I think, ultimately, is horrific and going to have horrific consequences. It is a ruling that envisions, an imperial presidency, provides room for real abuses of power, real abuses of rights, with no recourse against it. Even when the Supreme Court in the 70s shielded Nixon from civil liability, it's not clear they should have. It's not clear they should have. Oh, Scott, stop it. You're full of it. You have no idea what you're talking about. That's what we're living under now. But now you can prosecute a president, and now you can't. Hunter Biden's laptop is going to be thrown in our face forever because it's the talking point released by the RNC this morning. Hunter Biden laptop. Remember, Hunter Biden's laptop. Don't forget. Here it is. God. Think. I know that's hard. I know. Think for yourself. On top of that, Soman points out that the majority ruling is unbelievably vague and unclear on key points. It gives very little guidance on how to tell the difference between core powers and other official acts, which may not have absolute immunity. And this means there's going to be endless litigation over this. It's going to come back to the court. The court's going to have to fine-tune and define exactly where the line goes. The court refused, for example, to tell us whether presidents get absolute immunity for non-core official acts or merely presumptive immunity. If immunity in such cases is just presumptive, Soman writes, it is hard to tell what would be enough to overcome the presumption. The majority does suggest at one point that the president must, quote, be immune from prosecution for an official act unless the government can show that applying a criminal prohibition to that act would pose no danger of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch, unquote. Taken literally, Soman writes, this would preclude prosecution from any acts even remotely connected to anything official. And that, again, provides the executive branch with unbelievable amounts of power, which cannot be reviewed by the courts. What is the distinction between official acts and private acts? Again, is poorly explained. Is the motivation important? According to the court, no. The motive does not matter. So, you know, it's, for example, whatever the president communicates with the Justice Department is an official communication, is it? What if he's communicating to them about something that's clearly private? Like, you know, how do I undo this election? Unbelievably vague. Now, I read to you a section from Justice Barrett's argument, concurrence. She concurred with the majority, but wrote her own opinion. And she was a little better because she gave more specificity around these kind of things. And, for example, Barrett would basically allow prosecution of most of what Trump did after the elections. She says so explicitly. But it's not clear that the rest of the conservatives would allow it. It's not clear that they would view it as a private act. It's not clear how they would treat an executive order for SEALs Team 6, hypothetical, to go kill a political opponent. So we've given here special privileges to the president, privileges nobody else has. We've given them immunity for criminal prosecution that nobody else has. It is very disturbing. It is particularly disturbing given that whoever you think is the biggest threat, left or right, the reality is that we're moving towards more and more authoritarianism. Maybe a Trump prosecution over what he did would have reined in executive power somewhat, but that is now unlikely to actually happen. And what we are likely to see is an ever-growing president, ever confident in his immunity, ever confident in his ability to manipulate the American political system without any legal consequences. And that just sets us up for authoritarianism. It sets us up for a future dictator. It sets us up for dictatorship, as Peikoff has twice now predicted. Whether it comes to the left or the right, it doesn't matter. This applies equally to a leftist president as a right-wing president. So this isn't about left or right. This is clearly about protecting us from an imperial presidency. Yeah, and particularly if Trump wins, he now is going to believe, he already does, and now he's going to have some justification from the Supreme Court that he is completely immune and he can do anything he wants as president. And if you thought he was obnoxious, but sought more and more power for the presidency in the past, God, you don't know what's coming. It's going to be so much worse under Trump in the future. I mean, they're going to push the limits with executive orders and with things that clearly violate the Constitution, partially because it takes forever in the courts to figure that out. The court seems friendly to him, and they've now he's immune. So if he goes after the owner of the Washington Post, which I'm sure Scott will support, because he doesn't like what the Washington Post says, so be it. What can we do? You know, I mean, he got sick. Just imagine the power the president has to in terms of disrupting our lives, if he really thinks that he is immune from all prosecution. That is where we are. No, that is where we're heading. All right, let's take a look at your questions. Just a reminder that we do have a goal for these shows, so please consider asking a question or using a sticker to support the show. A lot of people listening. I suspect quite a few of the people listening are not monthly supporters live right now, are not monthly supporters and are not doing super chats. So just as a value for value, this show is supported through contributions of listeners like you. This is how you show value for value, your trader principle. Let me also remind you that it's great if you can become a monthly supporter of the show. That is really, really appreciated. You can do so on Patreon. You can do so on yaronbrookshow.com/membership. As such, doing so, you get all kinds of perks. So you can read the perk list on Patreon, on PayPal. So please consider supporting the show on a monthly basis. The Ayn Rand Institute, which is a sponsor of the show, would like to encourage those of you who would like to study the philosophy of objectivism more deeply and join the Ayn Rand University, where you can get some of the best education on objectivism anywhere. I will be starting a class on public speaking in 2 weeks. I'll be teaching a class on finance at Ayn Rand University starting in September, I think. So please consider signing up. You can find information about Ayn Rand University. You can do it on your own schedule, by the way. Now they have something called ARU Flex, where you can take classes, where you can watch the videos. You can do the homework assignment. You have office hours, but you can do it on your own schedule. You can take a class every month, but you still have office hours. You still have somebody grading your exams, your homework. So it's a fantastic opportunity to delve into the objectivist philosophy. They've got at least 2 courses on objectivism right now. One, objectivism through the fiction, the philosophy through the fiction, and the other, a seminar on objectivism. Both are available now through Flex, but you can also take regular classes live. So there are a ton of options now with ARU. You can find out more at aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. Scott, I just have to say this and then go to the Q&A. Scott, who said, no, he doesn't really like Trump, but it's 1 and 2. You have to pick between Biden and Trump. So he's gonna go with Trump. Is now defending everything Trump has ever done. I mean, everything. So he's become a complete Trump mindlessness syndrome guy, where he's defending what Trump told Pence and spinning it in the best positive light possible. In every issue, he is now going to be 100% behind Trump, in spite of the fact that he said he didn't like Trump. But it's a lie. It's a complete and utter lie. They love Trump. It's symptomatic of just the mass of people, of Republicans out there, who they prefer, they don't like Trump, but they have to vote for him. No, they love Trump. They love Trump, and they support Trump, and they support everything he does. And they will, hold their ears and ignore what he said at Charlottesville, or they'll spin it any way they want, in spite of the facts. They will, ignore what he did after the election and pretend, oh, no, there really was some fraud and he was legitimate and there was good reason for him to do what he did. They'll ignore his complete incompetence during COVID. It's all Fauci's fault. Trump had nothing to do with it. He didn't know what he was doing. They'll ignore every single thing that he did. I mean, I can understand somebody saying, yeah, Trump's awful. Trump is a disaster, and what he did after January 6th really is unforgivable. And he did. He violated the Constitution, but this is all we got. And I can't vote for Biden, Biden was horrible, so I'm going to vote for Trump. That's defending your vote in a rational way. When people start making arguments for why Trump is good, why Trump never did anything bad, that is Trump mindlessness syndrome. That makes them it discredits everything they've ever said. It discredits them as human beings. And that was a statement about a lot of people. So Scott now is just a foil because he's such an archetype, right? He's such an archetype. He's so exactly the Trump supporter, the Trump guy. I hear so many people saying exactly what he said. No, I didn't really want Trump, so he's become an archetype. So now criticizing Scott is just a way of me to go out and criticize. And having him here is just good for us to see exposure to how these people emote. I was going to say think, but they're not thinking. How these people emote and trying to understand, observing a real interesting psychological, political, tribal phenomena that is going on in the American right today. All right. And affecting objectivists, or people who call themselves objectivists, people influenced by objectivists, affecting them as well. All right. Let's see. Andrew, would you consider objectivism's principle of achieving pride in comparison to Christianity's warning against pride as an essential difference in the philosophies? Yes, absolutely. It's one of the most essential differences in philosophy. And in many ways, pride, as Aristotle called it, the queen of the virtues, is one of the ways in which we integrate the virtues. And it says a lot about what our virtues are. And it says a lot about your whole approach to life. It says a lot about your whole approach to to morality. So it captures in one virtue so much. And by capturing all this, it is a great foil for the view of pride in Christianity, which rests on this foundation, which I think Augustine gave it more than anybody else, which is of original sin, of the sinful nature of man. And therefore, who are you to strive for moral perfection? Who are you to take credit for your own achievements? Who are you? You're nothing. You're a sinful, sniveling little being, in the presence of this Almighty. Be humble, because you are nothing. So yes, I did a whole show on this, by the way. A few years ago, I think somebody sponsored it. I did a whole show on the Christianity versus objectivism on pride and how it reflects so much of the difference between objectivism and Christianity. And look, one of the sad things about the Reformation, right? One of the same things about Luther and Calvin is that in going against the Catholic Church, they embraced Augustine. Of all the Christian thinkers they could have latched onto and embraced, they chose to embrace the sickest, worst, most evil of the theologians, which is Augustine, of the founders of the church. And their argument against Catholicism was primarily that it wasn't Augustinian enough, that it had abandoned the teachings of the church's fathers, which I think Augustine is considered one of them, so that the Protestants, at least the Calvinists, the Lutherans, and the ones influenced by them, don't believe in free will. Huge advocates, strong advocates for original sin. Now, again, some sects of Protestantism, some sects following the Reformation abandon original sin, and Catholics believe in free will, or at least some Catholics believe in free will. It's a huge debate. But Luther didn't, and Calvin didn't, and much of Protestantism doesn't. So it is truly fascinating how bad Luther and Calvin were. I mean, Calvin ran an authoritarian state in Geneva. All right, guys, I'll just say we are way behind. Like, we're $200 short of our second hour goal. So that means that's $10, $20 questions. So come on over and ask questions using the Super Chat button below, or just do a sticker. You can support the show with a sticker. Yesterday, we had a bunch of 1776 stickers, $17.76. You can do $5, $2, $1.99. We've had, a day when we had like $30, $41, $1.99 stickers. Just whatever you can afford, whatever you think this show is value to you, whatever, given what you get or don't get out of it, please consider supporting the show, doing a sticker, or adding a question if you have any questions for me, and all questions are welcome. Liam says, $50. Thank you, Liam. Do Republicans believe they don't need to reverse socialist policies? They think all they have to do is slow down the growth of statism so the economy can grow faster than the government. That greater economic growth will pay for the freebies. Yes. I mean, they've accepted that, right? Trump has said he will not touch Social Security and Medicaid. Indeed, he said he is going to save them. He is the only one who can save them from the Democrats who are going to cut into them. Raise the retirement age, or make it make both programs means testing. That is, the rich don't get it. He is not going to touch it. But this is true of Republicans forever. During the Great Depression, the New Deal, Republicans were committed when they came back to power to undoing the New Deal. But you see, the New Deal is based on altruism. So once they came to power, how could they undo the New Deal? Because that would mean going against altruism, because, I mean, these people are in need. You're cutting programs that are necessary for people in need. You can't do that. The Christianity wouldn't allow them to do that. And then we got the Great Society from Johnson. And Ronald Reagan in 1964, you can find this speech online. It really is, it's the best Ronald Reagan speech ever. It's a speech he gave in support of Barry Goldwater in 1964. And Ronald Reagan, there's going to be a vote on Medicare. And Ronald Reagan gives a really good speech against Medicare. Against Medicare. And indeed, in the first few years after all the Great Society programs were passed, the Republicans were going to do away with the Great Society, Medicare, and the war on poverty. But when they got into power, they embraced it. They embraced it. They embraced Medicare, and they embraced the war on poverty. Why? Altruism. Once the program is in place, taking it out would actually hurt the poor, the people who need it, the old, the sick. You can't do that. It's the same reason they couldn't do it with Obamacare. And was one other example I was going to use. Yes, the one time government reformed welfare and made it more difficult for some people to get welfare. Limited, for example, single mothers' ability to get welfare without getting a job. Was done under, drumroll, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, the evil Clintons. You remember the evil Clintons that we love to hate? So it's impossible for the right, given their philosophy, given their ideology, to undo what the left has done, or to undo what they have done, what the right has done. I mean, a lot of the regulatory agencies we have were passed by the right. The antitrust laws were passed by Republicans. Most of the environmental laws were passed by Nixon. A lot of the new regulations of business was passed by Bush. So, it's even undoing what they did. They can't do it because altruism compels them to stand by the poor. Altruism compels them to regulate business. Can't let those greedy people, those selfish people, do what they want to do. So unless you're willing to challenge the moral code, or unless you have this immense confidence, and things are really bad, and you have an immense confidence that ultimately your policies will help the poor, which free markets always do, but Republicans don't have that confidence, then you just can't do it. You just can't do it. And therefore, Republicans, they will not reverse the socialist policies. They will not reverse the welfare state. They never have. They don't even reverse the regulatory state. Again, the most deregulation we've ever gotten, at least in post-World War II, was done under Jimmy Carter, a Democrat. And the only way to properly deregulate, I told you this in 2016, was through legislation. That's how Carter did it. Legislation, repealing, like you repeal Dodd-Frank. You get rid of a whole bunch of regulations all at once. And reimposing Dodd-Frank is really, really hard. Trump doesn't believe in legislation. He never liked legislation. Legislation was a lot of work. You had to go to Congress. You have to ask them for favors. You have to write bills. You have to negotiate. You have to do all this stuff. You have to work for it. So there were zero, nada, deregulation bills proposed, never mind passed, in Congress, even when Trump had a Republican House and Senate. So what does Trump do? He writes executive orders, which can be immediately reversed by Biden, which is exactly what happened. Anything good Trump did in terms of executive order was immediately reversed by Biden when he came into office. It's not how you deregulate. The deregulations of Jimmy Carter lasted to this day because they were done by legislation. Nobody is going to re-regulate the airlines. Nobody is going to re-regulate the trucking industry or brokerages or so many other industries because the legislation that regulated them initially was repealed. Fizzled. I want to get my 16-year-old son one of Rand's novels. What is a good starter book? Perhaps The Fountainhead. Yeah, I would say The Fountainhead. Of course, Anthem is an easy one, but you can give him Anthem and it'll take him a day or 2 days to read. But in terms of the major novels, I would say, Anthem. I'd say, The Fountainhead. Given The Fountainhead to read, and then Atlas. I read Atlas Shrugged when I was 16, but I was a particularly mature 16-year-old and very interested in the world. And Atlas was perfect for me. But I do think Fountainhead for most 16-year-olds is the more appropriate one. But yes, Fountainhead. David, hey David, is British, thank you for the $50, and you shifted the dollars away from, must be a different bank account, away from the Costa Rican currency. This is actually better because, let me just tell you, YouTube screws me on the conversion. They really do. They take the worst conversion rate possible, I think legally possible, and that's what they give me. So anytime you can pay me, guys, in dollars, it's better, much, much better. Anyway, David says, is British political system the same as Israel's? What are the main differences, if any? Israel doesn't have a king or queen, but the president in Israel serves a similar function as the king or queen do in England. In Israel, the president is elected by parliament, versus obviously the hereditary nature of the monarchy. But they both serve primarily a ceremonial function. They do technically are the ones who assign the, they have to technically approve of the government. They have to assign the responsibility for forming a government to a particular person. So in that sense, it's similar. Israel has no upper house. They have no House of Lords. I don't think the House of Lords really has any power from a legislature. So again, I think it's more ceremonial. So if you look at in Hebrew we say tachlis, if you look at the actual practical nature, they're very similar. Very, very similar. Israel, too, has a parliament from which an executive is chosen and a government is chosen. That means that there's very little separation of powers in Israel. Israel, too, like Britain, has no constitution, and therefore the role of the Supreme Court is unclear, and how it should function is unclear. So yes, a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities. Much more similar than different. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the House of Lords I don't like aristocracy. I don't like the continuation of aristocracy. I don't like the idea that there is a House of Lords. I mean, who are they lording over? Yes, I mean, I think the monarchy should be dismantled and the House of Lords should be dismantled as well. So, absolutely, I don't like those kind of institutions at all. At all. All right, Stringer Bell. Hello, Yaron. Can you elaborate on charter schools? What are the cons? Well, the con is that it's a government school, basically. The con is that it's using government money. It's not run on the profit motive. It's not competitive. It doesn't face real competition. It doesn't have to raise capital. It doesn't have to show it's profitable. It's better than public schools in that the school can have its own program separate from, but that program has to be, for example, there's a charter school in Colorado. It's by far, by every objective ranking, the best school in Colorado. Gets the highest scores, the placement record of the students is unbelievable. It's a classical education. They get a classical education at the school. It's a phenomenal school. It's run by a former U.S. House member, representative. And it's just, I've spoken there. I know the people who run it. I know some of the teachers. Amazing school. And it's a charter school. So I just learned that they almost didn't get it renewed because at the city council or the school board, whoever approves these things, they only got, it was a 3-2 vote, and one guy wasn't sure where he was go. Right? So it's not independent. It's dependent on government. It's local government, not federal government, dependent on local government. So charter schools are, it's better than nothing. But what you really want is competition in education. What you really want is to privatize education. And one way to privatize education is to provide parents with the money to pay for schools, so have the government, in a sense, fund education, but through the parents, but then have schools compete to try to get the parents' money. So imagine the parent gets every year $10,000 to pay for his child's education. And then there's competition. And the government gives it to him. So, I mean, again, this is not my ideal, but this is a step toward the ideal. The government gives it to him. But then he chooses, the parent chooses how to spend it. It could be on, any one of the 10 competing schools, each one with different curriculum, each one at a different price point, providing different perks. Any money the parent saves from the $10,000 the government maybe gave them, any money the parents save can be used for tutoring or for other educational activities. And now you've got real competition in education. Now you have an incentive to move all schools to private schools. Now you've got a slow but steady death of government schools. Charter schools don't allow for that. Charter schools are, again, set up by the government. All right, let's go to Chad, who did $50. Thank you, Chad. Really, really appreciate it. Whoops, what did I do? We are still, by the way, short by like $90 of our target for the second hour. We've got 10 minutes to make up for $90. Please consider making that up so we stay on target for the month in terms of the goal for the month. All right, Chad says, and again, a lot of people watching, so all you have to do is, I'm not seeing a lot of $5, $2, $1 questions and stickers. So a lot of you are just, what's it called? Free writing. Or maybe you're rushing to support the show on a monthly basis, which would be great at Patreon or on PayPal, which would be great too. All right, Chad said, without disagreeing that this blanket immunity is horrible, and Trump too, is there any sort of protection appropriate to enable leaders to act with conviction and not constantly fear politically motivated lawsuits upon leaving office? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult, but I will note this, that all the lawsuits filed against Trump after he left office would all fall under private action, according to the Supreme Court. So what the Supreme Court did not protect what Trump was prosecuted from. Even if some of the prosecutions were politically motivated, you could argue, so what if they're politically motivated? Nobody's tried in the entire history of the United States to prosecute a president for what any one of us would consider something reasonable. Like, I don't know, approving a drone attack on a terrorist, or approving listening in to an ally's cell phone number. It's just never happened. It's never happened. So we're worried about something that's never in the 250 years of America's existence happened. And suddenly it's become a big issue. But it's become a big issue because a former president has been prosecuted, but not for official acts. And for things he, with exception of the New York case, should go to jail for. So one is, I'd say, there's just no experience of this actually happening, right? For an official act, like dropping the nuclear bomb, the atomic bomb, there was no prosecution for that. Now, how do we, what should be the position? I don't know. I mean, I agree, Chad, that there should be something here. There should be a recognition of the position you're putting a commander-in-chief in, without, at the same time, granting him full, unquestioned immunity. Now, I think the Supreme Court has tried to find some kind of balance here of how to deal with it. It just doesn't look like, based on what I'm reading, that they've achieved that. So, I don't know. Once we open that can of worms up where some crazy prosecutor can prosecute you on pretty much on official stuff, I don't know what you do with that. Maybe the only way to address it is with some kind of immunity. But there are real dangers here. There are real dangers here. So I think it will boil down to, given the Supreme Court's ruling, a clear definition on what constitutes the constitutional role of the president, where he gets immunity. Right? So, how do you not get prosecuted for dropping an atomic bomb? Foreign policy is a constitutionally part of your role. You can't prosecute the president for doing that. It's kind of what the Supreme Court was going for, but is not provided clarity around, and still makes ambiguous. So I'm sympathetic, and I don't know how you achieve the right kind of balance. We are entering uncharted waters in the sense that people are going to use their philosophical disagreements about the role of government or about how to engage in any particular governmental activity in order to go after people through the legal system. It's going to be really, really ugly if that's the case. And I don't think the founders thought of that, and they clearly don't include it in the Constitution. And if you were a originalist and textualist, which I am not, you would clearly have ruled differently than the way the majority ruled. But something needs to be protected, and how you define that something, I don't know. We're going to have Steve Simpson on in not this Monday, the following Monday, in a week and a half. Steve Simpson, who's a lawyer, to talk about the Supreme Court cases. We can ask him about his opinion about the immunity case and how he would deal with exactly Chad's question. Okay, so yes, too much immunity is bad. We get that. We don't want an imperial president. But how do we stop politicized lawsuits? Interesting. I don't know. All right, we are moving into our third hour. Almost. Oh, we still got 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes for $41. No, I'm wrong. 5 minutes for $59. That'll get us to the right point. $59 in the next 5 minutes to get us past that second hour. Jason Adams says, do you think Al Pacino was more deserving of a Best Actor Oscar for his role in any of the following? Serpico, The Godfather II, Dog Day Afternoon, and Justice for All, than for his win in Scent of a Woman? God, I don't have them all right in front of me, but I have to say that at the time, I think his performance in Dog Day Afternoon is spectacular. It truly is exceptional. I can understand why he didn't win it. He didn't win it because he was portraying a gay bank robber, bad guy, weirdo. But man, in terms of acting, did he pull that off? He really did pull it off, right? I think that, so Dog Day Afternoon, but the problem that year was not only the type of role, because he was nominated for an Oscar, but he went up against Jack Nicholson in Jack Nicholson, right? In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was also brilliant, right? How do you choose Best Actor between Jack Nicholson and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon? And I think any other year he would have won it. Any other year he would have won it. Serpico, he was brilliant. Godfather II, he was excellent. I can't remember him in Justice for All. But yes, he was good for all of those. And I agree with your comment here that, He probably got it for Scent of a Woman because he'd been overlooked so many times in the past. So there's no question. You see this a lot. The Academy tries to balance it out. They definitely give some Oscars as Lifetime Achievement Awards. And I get it. Actors getting old. They might never get it. This is a way to give it to them. Right? So, yes. Yep. All right. Let's see. Lucinda. Can't think of a question right now, but let's get to that goal. Thank you, Lucinda. Appreciate the help in getting there. David says, gotta go. Thanks for today's show. Thank you, David. Thanks for the support. Really appreciate it. Thanks for helping us get to the goal. With $22, $20. We got the two. $20 short from the goal for the second hour. 3 minutes left. One $20 questions get us there, or sticker, before we go to the third hour. Jack says, Jack Blackfoot, thank you, Ron. Back to the gutter cleaning and being safe. Yes, stay safe. I love life too much to fall. Please don't fall. All right, Andrew. It might be harmless to say a man should think about himself, but psychologically curious if you think that's technically accurate. Is think about your values more accurate? Differentiating narcissism from objectivism? No, because even the way you put it is wrong. Think about, you didn't say it wrong. You said your values. But it's not just your values. You should think about your character. You should think about how you're feeling right now. You should think about your love life. You should think about what to eat for dinner. You should think about, how you want to, what kind of life you want to live in 15 years. You should think about a lot of things. Now, most of them fall into values, but you're thinking about yourself. And there's too much of values being somehow not about yourself. So it's not about, it's easy to separate us from narcissism because it's not about the world revolving around yourself. It's not about worrying about what other people think about you. It's purely about figuring out how to live well. How to live well for yourself. Today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, and everything in between. It's about thinking about me. So I don't see that as problematic. And this is the thing about narcissists. Narcissists don't think. They emote. They emote. So, psychologically, you want to think about yourself. It's really important that you think about yourself. Psychologically, it's really important you put it that way because it's important that the values are your values. The future is your future. What you're going to eat is for you. Now, you can say, again, all of those are values, but they're not values divorced from you. So this is why Rand is so insistent on selfishness. Self. It is about the self. All right. That was our $20 questions. We're out of $20 questions. Still, we're in our third hour. So 2:58 to go in this hour. We'll see how far we can get. I've got, about 20 $2 and $5 and $10 questions. So we're going to go over these fairly quickly. If you want to ask a question, now's a good time. Equal to reality says better in your hands than in the Labor governments. I'm not sure what is better in my hands, but I'm just going to say I think everything is better in my hands than in the Labor Party's hands. I think I will do it better than the Labor Party no matter what it happens to be. Unless what happens to be is bad, right? Socialism is probably not better in my hands. I guess, I see what he's saying. He's giving the money to me, but I don't know if that's tax deductible, so you're going to give it to the Labor Party anyway. Like if I was a nonprofit, you could deduct it from taxes, and then you would save it from giving it to the Labor government. But just giving it to me doesn't prevent the Labor coming to get it from you. So I wish I could say that. Give me your money so that you don't have to give it to Labor, but you can't unless it's like a business expense. Can you take this as a business expense? Harper Campbell says, did you ever want to be a lawyer or a judge? Would you enjoy being on the Supreme Court? I never wanted to be a lawyer or a judge. I didn't like being a lawyer. I didn't think I liked speaking when I was young. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to build things and make things. I wanted to be out there building, making, managing. I liked the idea of being a manager. I never wanted to be a lawyer. Again, I didn't think I was any good at speaking. It's a skill that developed, a skill and a passion that developed late in my life, not early in my life. Look at me now. Today, I certainly wouldn't want to be a lawyer, and I thought about this when I was 18 as well. I wouldn't want to be a lawyer in the context of our legal system. I wouldn't want to, criminally, I wouldn't want to have to defend creeps. I wouldn't want to have to function with the limitations placed by current law. I wouldn't want to be in a position to defend bad laws or to live within, to deal with bad laws, bad precedent, all of that. Now, would I enjoy being in the Supreme Court? Absolutely. That would be fun. I'd love being on the Supreme Court. I'll never be on the Supreme Court. It's never going to happen. But of all the jobs in government, it could probably be the most interesting one. Because I just write what I wanted to write. I wouldn't follow precedent. I would follow the Constitution, but my interpretation of the Constitution based on the Declaration of Independence, based on the concept of individual rights. I would have a definition of individual rights in pretty much every one of my decisions. That would be a lot of fun. I would write a dissent and concurrent opinion on every case because I would have a different opinion than the rest of the court on everything. A lot of writing, though. That's what you have, what do you call it, clerks for. That would be fun. Clark, what was Russo's beef with Kant? Rousseau is basically a Kantian. Rousseau comes before Kant. I don't think Rousseau had a beef with Kant. Kant had a picture of Rousseau on his desk. Kant followed Rousseau. You could say Kant is a Rousseauian. Kant completes the job Rousseau starts in dismantling the Enlightenment. Dismantling the Enlightenment. So, in many ways, they're one and the same. But Kant admired Rousseau because he understood. I think that they were kindred spirits in their approach to the Enlightenment, wanting to get rid of it, dismantling it philosophically. Blackout says, the reason Catholics are happier than Protestants is because the latter believe faith alone acquires the highest moral good, salvation. Severing obedience from reward, reducing morality to duty. Again, it depends on which Protestants, and it depends on which Catholics. Certainly Protestantism is not just one doctrine. So Calvin and Luther did not believe that faith alone. Indeed, Calvin and Luther believed that you were predestined. So you didn't even need to have faith. All was required is that you would be chosen before you were born. Indeed, Aquinas believed that whether you went to heaven or hell was decided before you were born. So some babies who died as a baby went to hell, even though they hadn't committed any sin yet. But they had original sin. And they hadn't repented yet. But it doesn't matter because it was decided before they were born. The whole thing is absurd, right? Religion is so stupid. Christianity in particular, it goes through these convoluted things, and then they have to go at purgatory in order to satisfy, and then of course, this wasn't Aquinas. Sorry, this was Augustine. If I said Aquinas, I'm wrong. Augustine. But yeah, these were huge debates among the Catholics. I don't know the Catholics are happier than Protestants, but Catholics certainly are more intellectual than Protestants. Protestantism is much more religion of emotion than Catholicism. Catholicism has a Thomist roots, which basically make it more an attempt to be more logical, rational, with a foundation of complete mysticism. So it becomes floating abstraction intellectualism. Whereas Protestantism is much more about faith than about emotion. But yeah, there is something to this faith alone acquires the highest moral. Some Protestants believe this. They get salvation from faith alone, versus some Catholics, again, have to earn it. They have to earn salvation through their actions. But the actions mostly suck. So I'm not sure that leads to actual happiness on this earth. Bash Bannigan says, would Americans elect a female president? Yeah, I think so. I mean, Hillary was almost elected. If it hadn't been Hillary, if it had been some other female, I think she could have beaten Trump. So, yeah, I think Americans are ready to elect a woman president. Capitalist Spy. I'd like to see a CATO CEI ARI vetting process. Yeah. I mean, I don't need CATO and CEI, but they have some area expertise. Can I exclude CATO's foreign policy guys from vetting anybody in the foreign policy field? But yes, that would be pretty cool. Maribens, is it worth ARI listing suggested appointees and agency phase-out schedule? No, too early. We have too small of an audience, huge amount of work with almost no upside. And it's not clear we have any suggested appointees. I mean, who do you appoint? I mean, you appoint each other? Nobody knows who we are. So, no, I think it's too early. One day, too early. Esoteric dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, I just saw the 2025. I'm concerned it would poison the water on deregulation of anything. So many people lump free market with crazy right. I agree. It's a good point. It's always dangerous when the bad guys come up with good ideas. Yeah, because it poisons other good ideas associated with those same bad guys. So I think you're absolutely right. Urban Porcupine, thank you to whoever gifted me a membership yesterday. Thank you, Urban. Really appreciate it. Who is this? Michal just says, I don't like you. I assume she means me. I'm sorry she don't like me. Why don't you like me? I'm a likable guy. PandaBro wants to know how objectivists should respond to the metaphysics and epistemology of Karl Kaspers. I don't know Karl Kaspers. So I don't know. You should ask that question when we have a philosopher on who knows who Karl Kaspers is, because I don't know who he is. Karl Jaspers. Okay, Karl Jaspers. Still don't know who he is. I'm assuming I'm ignorant here. Because I don't care about Israel, she doesn't like me? I mean, that's a funny statement towards one of the biggest advocates for Israel ever. Is anybody better at defending Israel against the barbarians that it is facing than me? Michal, you're getting this completely wrong. I don't know who you think I am, but I'm one of Israel's biggest defenders and have been my whole life. So anyway, I am She's confused. No. Oh, I see. That's pretty funny. You think supporting Israel means voting for Trump. So you first think supporting Israel means putting everything else aside and only focusing on one issue, and then also believing that Trump will be better for Israel than whoever the alternative is. Yeah, that's just nuts. That's just nuts. I don't agree with either one of those. I actually understand what Israel needs, and it doesn't need Donald Trump. And I actually understand how the damage Donald Trump could do to the United States of America. And Israel needs a strong United States of America and a principled United States of America. The more America becomes Trump-like, the weaker Israel will ultimately be. No. I won't support Trump because I love Israel too much. I won't support Trump because I love America too much. So Karl Kaspers was a German-Swiss psychiatrist and philosopher who was a strong influence on modern theology, psychiatry, and philosophy. All right, I know nothing about him, so I assume Objectivism has strong positions against him. He's considered, I guess, an existentialist. You'll have to ask one of our philosophers who knows more about it. Jay, I have always held that the president, while in office, had total immunity. The only control on that is the ballot box. I saw this as a large leverage check and balance principle, except impeach. It doesn't look like the founders thought that. I don't think the founders thought that. So there has to be something here. I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know how you define it exactly so you don't create a really bad circumstances. How do you balance it? I don't know. Obviously, Supreme Court is trying to do that. I just don't think, it seems like they haven't done a good job at it. Mark, Yaron, when next can we schedule one-on-one or join the next sponsor Zoom call? It's a shame that judicial review is such a mess. Objectivism remedies. Talk to Angela. I mean, I was doing one-on-ones the last few weeks, so I assume if you are, if you're up to speed on your $250 a month support level, then you should have been contacted by Angela for one-on-one. So check to make sure you're up to speed on it, and then contact Angela. And the next sponsor Zoom call will be, we just had one, right, on Saturday. So the next one will be probably late this month. So like the last weekend in this month. Andrew, what do you view as being, 27th is the next Zoom, Ask Me Anything Zoom call. What do you view as being a reasonable scope of immunity for president vis-a-vis being commander-in-chief? Well, I don't know. I mean, again, it would have to be some kind of immunity. It would be the same immunity from prosecution that relates directly to his job in protecting rights, right? Directly to his functioning in protecting rights, so as working as commander-in-chief and protecting the United States. So exactly how do you phrase that and how do you put that? I don't know. Clearly, something has to be. He has to be immune, even though, again, there's never been this immunity. If there has been, it's been implicit. But it can't encompass everything he does. What if a president goes nuts and orders, I don't know, the invasion of Mexico that everybody opposes? Congress is in too much disarray to actually pass a law to stop him. Impeachment is one way, I guess, but impeachment doesn't exclude the ability to prosecute, as Justice Sotomayor pointed out. Maybe, but even an act of war, if the war is completely irrational, completely divorced from American interests, completely opposed to by everybody else, I don't know. How do you balance that out? I mean, this is the problem. Once you get into an era of irrational, power-lusting presidents, how do you then restrain them? Esoteric dichotomy. Yaron, is the Supreme Court compromised? At what point does divergence from actual constitutional principle threaten the court's legitimacy? Well, I mean, I think the court has been diverging from real, properly understood constitutional principle for at least 100 years, certainly since the New Deal, but probably even before that. So I think the court, in many ways, is illegitimate in that sense, even today. As I've said many times, sounds arrogant, but I think it's true. There's not a single judge on the court, and there probably hasn't been for the last 100 years, who understands the concept of individual rights and understands the centrality of individual rights to the American Constitution. In other words, the relationship between the Constitution and the Declaration, but who properly understands the Declaration. I don't think there's one. I don't think there has been one. So they are completely compromised and have been forever. It's why we have the mixed economy. It's part of why we have the mixed economy that we have. The courts did not stand by the system of government that this country was founded on. It did not stand by a pretty good constitution. RDF, thank you for the sticker, $2. If I could encourage everybody listening right now to come in and just do a $2 sticker, that would be amazing. All right, Apollo Zeus sends me a heart. Thank you for the heart, really appreciate that. Gail says, yes, complete separation of government from education. Yes, but for that, the battle has to be done either in the courts to establish that, or it has to be done at the local level in state government, because the state governments are the ones that mostly regulate education. Andrew, it's sad that politically some objectivists are just loyal Republicans. We need to be more radical than that. No kidding. Yeah, it is. It actually, sad is the right thing. I mean, Scott and the people he symbolizes are just sad. Pathetic and sad. Those are the two words that come to my mind. Silvanos reminds everybody, like the show. And if there are any whales out there, we're short like $200, so please whale away. Apollo Zeus, if you could have ESP when you were younger, anything, what would you choose other than what you have? I don't know. What would you choose? To fly? I fear of flight, so ESP. I don't know. Have the ability to hear people's thoughts. I mean, that's a little scary. But not randomly, only the ones you focus on. I don't know. Scott was gifted a membership. He did not buy in as a member. Lucinda, God, I hate mosquitoes so much. Just had to squash a gigantic one in my kitchen. Yeah. And we could eradicate the really, really bad ones, the ones that carry diseases, by genetically modifying them, and we refuse to do so, and it's pathetic that we don't do it. I'm all for getting rid of mosquitoes, particularly in areas where they're not even native. Most mosquitoes are not native. Anyway, I hate mosquitoes. Apollo Zeus says, have you any acting experience? None, nada, no acting experience at all. At all. Lucinda says, YouTube wouldn't let me send the message where I said everything I wanted to say about mosquitoes. Maybe the unedited message was too hurtful for twos. Yeah, I think that, you know, you cannot it's unacceptable, Lucinda, to express hate speech towards mosquitoes. I mean, to be hateful towards mosquitoes. I mean, what kind of human being are you? I mean, it's just not. Hate speech is unallowed. PandaBro, I will just say, we can get into the details of it, but objectivists reject existentialists completely. They reject their metaphysics and epistemology. They reject the fundamental idea that reason is not capable of knowing reality and guiding man's life in reality. Reject completely the idea that happiness is not possible. So the epistemology of really skepticism ultimately, of rejection of reason ultimately, and therefore for Dostoevsky an embrace of faith as the only alternative, for Nietzsche an acceptance of kind of an amorality, a rejection of morality as the only alternative, but not based on reason. We reject all of that, and indeed, the objectivist holds that that reason allows us to know reality, that reason is our guide to action, that reason is efficacious, and that morality can be discovered through reason. A morality that ultimately leads to a free society and to capitalism. Oops, I closed one that I didn't want to. All right. Richard, thank you, Richard. We should erect a wall at the northern border to keep out jumbo Canadian mosquitoes. No, there are no mosquitoes in Canada, are there? You mean mosquitoes live in Canada? Isn't it too cold for them? Don't they all freeze to death and die like you'd expect human beings to do as well during the winter? How do they survive the winters? It has to be a very high wall. Mosquitoes can fly pretty high. But you know, yeah. They're like Canadian geese, I hear. So they survive as eggs. The cold doesn't destroy them as eggs. And then, yeah, well, I mean, one of the main reasons, I know I'm going to upset some of you, one of the main reasons California is one of the best places on planet Earth to live is because California has almost no mosquitoes. Almost no mosquitoes. I think, like, in the 50s, they used DDT and killed them all. And no bugs. There are no roaches in California. There are no mosquitoes in California. I mean, just not having mosquitoes and cockroaches makes California an amazing place to live. San Juan has lots of mosquitoes, and they have roaches, although I haven't seen many. But yeah, no, San Juan has all the bugs. And this is one of the big advantages of California over San Juan, is lack of mosquitoes, right? Ian says there are mosquitoes in California, but many, many less. There are no mosquitoes. I mean, it depends where you live, right? So, and lately they've been importing them from Asia. They've come on boats from Asia. But where I lived in California, it was so rare you'd see a mosquito. A couple of mosquitoes a year, both in Northern California, San Jose, and in Orange County. Just very, very, very few mosquitoes. Yeah, I mean, Ian says he has windows open all the time without screens. I didn't, because the rats would come in. We had rats, but we didn't have mosquitoes. Partially because it's dry, but I do think California used massive quantities of DDT in the 40s and 50s and killed a lot of species of insects, and they haven't come back. Yeah, so another reason it's hard to beat California. All right, Apollo Zeus, how important is the role of psychology Psychological visibility in human life, huge role. Very, very important to have that psychological visibility. It serves in a similar function as art does. Art gives you metaphysical visibility. It gives visibility to your metaphysical value judgments. Psychological visibility gives you visibility to your character and to your emotions. So it's very, very, very important. It's why love is so important, why romantic love is so important, why friendship is important. Friendship gives visibility. And you should provide visibility. It goes both ways, right? So both in friendship and in love, visibility is the key, and it's why they're so important. There was a talk at Ocon by Tristan, one of our young intellectuals, on friendship, and he talks a lot about visibility in that talk. Apollos, the role of compliments in enhancing others' self-esteem. Never give compliments to enhance somebody's self-esteem. Your job is not to enhance anybody's self-esteem. People's self-esteem is not enhanced by other people. Only you can enhance your own self-esteem. Compliments are important in order to provide the other person with visibility. It shows that you can see them. It shows that you've identified their virtues. It shows that you know something about them. So compliments are important so that you provide visibility. It relates to your previous question. That's one way in which you provide visibility, is by complimenting people on the good things. It's also an issue of justice, but psychologically it's an issue of visibility, not self-esteem. Lucinda, since Michal didn't pay you for that response you gave, I will. Thank you. Michal said also, she said, your logic is flawed. You think mosquitoes are worse than rats. I don't think mosquitoes are worse than rats, although I will say, in the modern world, mosquitoes kill a lot more people than rats do. A lot. Not true in history. In history, rats killed more people. But in the modern world, mosquitoes kill a lot more people than rats do. Here in San Juan, where I live, there's a lot of dengue fever, which is very, very, very unpleasant if you get it. And you get it from mosquitoes, and some people die from it. The rats in California, I wasn't worried about getting disease from them. I just find rats unbelievably disgusting. The problem is rats live everywhere. Where do you not have rats? I want to know where you don't have rats. Rats are in California, they're in Texas, they're in Florida, they're here in San Juan, they're everywhere. Rats are everywhere. So rats are more prevalent than mosquitoes, I think, and less dangerous. All right, exact description of your weekly workout routine, and do you know Dr. Doug McDuff? Oh, God. I know Doug McDuff, yes. I've met him a couple of times. I followed many of his prescriptions of super slow, high-intensity super slow for many years in a gym in California, but there is no super slow gym here in Puerto Rico. My routine is not consistent with McDuff's ideas anymore. So my routine is I do pretty much some cardio every day. I do mostly, I'd say, medium intensity cardio, what Peter Attia calls zone 2. I do at least 3 hours a week. Maybe more of zone 2 cardio every week. Then I do a couple of sessions a week of high intensity cardio. That is interval training. 4 minutes rest, 4 minutes high intensity, 4 minutes rest, 4 minutes high intensity. And then I do Monday is upper body weight training. Wednesday is core. Friday, this morning, was legs, weight training. So that's my workout routine. Mostly, right? My schedule, there are always exceptions. Andrew says, malaria still kills tons of people worldwide. Totally avoidable. The power of ideas. Yeah, much more important to get rid of mosquitoes than it is to get rid of rats. Get rid of both of them from my perspective. But mosquitoes kill millions of people. And it's horrible. All right, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate the support. Thanks to all the super chatters. I will see you all on Monday. If you speak Hebrew, then I have my Hebrew show, my show in Hebrew on Sunday, the Yaron Brook show in Hebrew on Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So join us then. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a phenomenal, fantastic weekend. It's a continuation of the 4th of July weekend, so have a great time. Bye, everybody.